الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. وعن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المهدي مني أجل الجبهة أقنى الأنف يملأ الأرض قسطا وعدلا كما ملئت ظلما وجورا يملك 7 سنين. Our dear ulama kiram, especially Hazrat Mufti Taqi Uthmani Sahab, Damat Barakatuhum, and the rest of our dear friends here. The Mahdi is always, radiyallahu anhu, has always been a very controversial figure in terms of what people are trying to do with the Mahdi, and because a lot of the sectarian groups that have come so far and may still come, Mahdi radiyallahu anhu seems to be a very important figure for them. One of the reasons possibly for that is although there's over 200 hadith about it, I'll cover some of them today, but there are over 200 narrations from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly, and then from the Sahaba and other quotes, other athar like that. But because of some ambiguity with them and maybe no clear mention in Sahih al-Bukhari or Sahih Muslim with his name, radiyallahu anhu, there's a lot of people who've tried to co-opt him. So for example, we have the Shias who have taken Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari and said that he is the Mahdi, and he's hiding and he's going to be coming out. He's in a ghar, he's in a cave somewhere in Samarra in Iraq apparently. And then of course you have the Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, who had made similar claims. I remember once listening to a radio interview in which I can't remember which of the leaders, it was either the current leader or the one previous to this of the Qadiani movement. And one person asked a very good question. He said, if you're saying that your grandfather was the awaited Mahdi or Isa alayhi salam, in fact he went up to Isa alayhi salam, beyond Mahdi, he went to Isa alayhi salam as well and claimed to be the Messiah. He said, the traditions, the ahadith, etc., they tell us that when Isa alayhi salam comes, Dajjal has to be there as well, because Isa alayhi salam will kill the Dajjal. So we haven't seen a Dajjal. So how can Isa have come? How can the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam have come, which you're claiming your grandfather to be? How can that be the case when Dajjal hasn't been around? So the answer that he gave was very interesting. He said, जिन आँखों ने ईसा अलैहि सलाम को नहीं पहचाना, तो वो दज्जाल को कैसे पहचानते? It's just a clever answer. That's all it is. But basically, Mahdi radiyallahu anhu, the reason he's called Mahdi, that's not going to be his name. His name apparently is going to be either Ahmad or Muhammad ibn Abdullah, from the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have numerous ahadith that describe that his name will be just like mine, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. But the word Mahdi is a title. The Mahdi means the guided one. His one title is Mahdi, another title is Jabir. So Mahdi means the guided one by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially in those very turbulent times. Now let us understand a bit of why Mahdi radiyallahu anhu has come, when he's going to come. Among the signs of the Day of Judgment, which pretty much started at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's demise from this world, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam departed from this world, that was considered to be one of the first signs, and then there were other signs. And throughout history we've had many, many signs. So the ulama have distinguished the signs between the minor and the major. And one of the ways to understand minor and major, as opposed to something just small and something great, is that the minor signs are those which will manifest themselves around the world in different places, in different intensities. So for example, disobedience to parents, that's a minor sign. The prevalence of dancing people and singing and nudity and so on and so forth. You get that more in some areas as opposed to others. There's more disobedience to parents in some areas as opposed to others. And so on and so forth. Numerous signs like that. So in terms of that, the description of the major signs are those which will become a global phenomena. So after all of the minor signs, there's numerous minor signs, After that, you come to the major signs. And the first of the major signs is the Mahdi radiallahu anhu. But he will come in tandem, because as soon as he comes and his army is being prepared, there's one opinion which says that he'll be born in Medina Munawwara. Another opinion says that he'll come from the east at the head of a huge army. So there are various opinions to where he's going to exactly hail from. But he is the first of the major signs, a global phenomenon, because after that the world will not be the same again. After that the situation of the world will not be the same again ever. Because once he comes, Dajjal would then soon arrive and start his corruption around the world, and that's a long story, and maybe somebody else is going to speak about the Dajjal. But Mahdi radiallahu anhu would be at the head of an army, and there'll be a Sufyani apparently, and there's different versions of this. There'll be in some narrations, and not all of them are sahih necessarily, but there are descriptions of various different leaders that will be at loggerheads with one another. And Mahdi radiallahu anhu will be at the head of the army of the haqq and the truth. So when he comes, eventually he will be, the story goes, and there are, as I said, many narrations to sift through here. But one of them says that many ulama, because of the turbulence around the world and the situation with the ummah around the world being on fire basically, they would have come for Hajj. As a lot of people go for Hajj, a lot of ulama go for Hajj. And some of the top ulama of the world, most influential ones, the greatest of the ulama, would have come for Hajj. And approximately 7 of them, this is as mentioned by Barzanji in his Al-Isha' fi Ashrat al-Sa'a, and he mentions that approximately 7 of them will suddenly, coincidentally, God incidentally come together, and they'll say, we need to find Mahdi radiallahu anhu, because the situation has now basically become extreme. So they would have come from different parts with huge followings, and they will suddenly come together and they'll decide, we need to find him now. So they will, there are numerous descriptions mentioned in the hadith about him. So they will eventually single out a person, and they will try to, and he will try to run away from the individual who's supposed to be the Mahdi radiallahu anhu. He will run away from, he'll escape. So they will chase him to, they will basically find him in Makkah first, but then he will go to Medina Munawwara, and this is around Hajj time. 3 times this will happen: Makkah, Medina, Makkah to Medina Munawwara to Makkah, and then so on. And eventually they say that they will say to him that this is your responsibility. Allah knows best, but they said this is his responsibility, this is your responsibility, and then they will take the bay'ah, and then after that the world will never be the same again, because the entire world will see a lot of differences taking place after that. Eventually he will end up with the Muslim army in Damascus, in the masjid, which is the Umayyad Masjid. Now that was built by Walid ibn Abdul Malik in the 1st century. He was one of the Umayyads, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan's son. He built the masjid. Amazing masjid. It's actually, it's a very, very large masjid, and there's a huge community all around it. On one side, which is the side where Imam Ghazali rahmatullah used to have his retreat place. When we studied there, that's where we used to study with Sheikh Abdur Razak al-Halabi rahimahullah. On that side. On the opposite side is the eastern side. And the eastern side has a white minaret. And I remember we could never go in there because it was closed. And what's interesting is that behind that minaret, behind that corner of the masjid, the opposite corner of the Souk al-Hamidiyya as it is the Christian area of Damascus, behind that. And that is apparently the minaret, which it says that Manaratul Bayda, that Isa alayhi salam will descend on this minaret in Damascus. Mahdi radiallahu would have already been there, the iqamah would have been given, the famous hadith, the iqamah would have already been given, and Isa alayhi salam would have descended, and people will obviously notice who he is. The Christians are there, the Jews are there, and everybody's waiting. So it's like it's imminent, it seems, that Isa alayhi salam is going to come. And when he comes, they will say, okay, now you lead the prayer. So that's the famous hadith that's mentioned, that you lead the prayer. But Mahdi radiallahu Isa alayhi salam is saying, no, it was the iqamah was given for one of you, for your imam. And that, they say, is referring to obviously the Mahdi radiallahu anhu. So that's up to where Mahdi radiallahu anhu will do his main task. After that, Isa alayhi salam will obviously take over and be the main person. But then some narrations or some understandings also mention that it will actually be Mahdi who will continue with Isa alayhi salam there as well. But then you don't hear much about Mahdi radiallahu anhu. According to many of the narrations, Mahdi radiallahu anhu will be around for 7 years, meaning his prominence in terms of him leading the ummah will be for around 7 years. Now, from there they will actually find out that Dajjal is going to Jerusalem. So they will go to Jerusalem from there, and eventually Isa alayhi salam will kill the Dajjal in Jerusalem. Now going back to Mahdi radiallahu anhu, as I mentioned, because there's so much ambiguity about him, I remember in the 90s I read a book. It was called The Mahdi, written by a Western author. I think his name is Quinnell or something like that. It's a very interesting, really a massive conspiracy story. And there are numerous reviews on it. It's a made-up story. But just to show you the importance of Mahdi radiallahu anhu in terms of determining the future of the ummah as such. Right? That's why I mentioned this story. It mentions in there that the CIA and the MI6 get together and they basically try to find a guy who they want to convince that he's the Mahdi, but he's their stooge. And they find a guy like that and they make it so realistic for him that he is supposed to offer a sacrifice of a lamb or a goat or something like that. And he's been hearing voices. Right? Now, this is a time when there were no cell phones, no mobile phones and things like that. So essentially the story is that this is set in the 1980s. So he's saying that he goes into a cave and he's been made to hear voices. Basically there's just speakers placed there. I don't know if anybody else has read that book. And so he hears voices that you're going to be chosen and so on. And you get people like that. You had people just recently in Pakistan last year who claimed to be the next prophet. Right, so you have people like that. Anyway, imposters, there are going to be a certain number anyway. And then he's supposed to give to make this really real. They say that he's told that you have to give a sacrifice. And if this sacrifice is accepted and you are the Mahdi, then there will be a light that will come, a light that will come from the heavens, and it will basically burn this, or it will strike it. And the whole idea is that from a satellite, they were going to send a laser beam to a receiver that was inside that animal. Have you read that book? You sound like you read it. Okay. So the KGB gets involved. Right? So they're going to try to undermine this. And then they see that it's a great plot. So they want a part of it. And then after that, it all falls apart. Right? But that's just to give you an idea. And some of the reviews on that book is that if only this could have been plausible and if only this could have been a reality, that's what a lot of the reviewers were saying, then we would have dealt with a lot of the Muslim Ummah basically. That just shows you the importance of the position of Mahdi. And even today, the major conspiracy theories, numerous reviews, reports, documentaries on YouTube and other places about these signs of Mahdi. In fact, you will probably know yourself in the last 15 to 20 years how many predictions there have been for the signs of Mahdi radiallahu anh, that he's going to come. And I think the last one was the last one I remember was 207. There was a scholar who'd come, there was a Maulana who'd come from South Africa, and he, mashallah, gave a lot of insight, and he predicted that it was going to be around 2007, I can't remember exactly, and 2007 went and he hasn't come yet. I remember we asked our Hazrat Maulana Hashim Sahib Damat Barakatuhum about them when we were still studying about the signs, because you always hear that there are signs that he's been born now. Because remember, Mahdi radiallahu anh, while he may be born, he's only going to be revealed as the Mahdi, as the position of the Mahdi when he's 40 years of age. So technically he could be born, but personally speaking, I'm not waiting for him. Right? A lot of people, they have such a pessimistic attitude towards the world that they think it's the worst situation we're in now and it cannot become any better. And that's why only Mahdi radiallahu anh is needed now to come and solve the situation. That's a very defeatist attitude. Because then we're just saying we've outsourced it to Mahdi radiallahu anh. We don't have to do anything. And the Ummah, if you read, I would suggest everybody read Shaykh Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi Rahmatullah Alayhi's Saviors of Islamic Spirit, especially the first volume. Because what it shows you, in that first volume, the first 7 centuries are covered of the ups and downs of the Muslim Ummah, of the ebbs and flows, of the difficulties, and then Allah sending somebody. And we had some situations with the Tartars, for example, and other situations where it was much worse than now. In Baghdad alone, 1 million Muslims were killed when the Tartars came in. That was shock and awe, right? Compared to current times. Current times are bad, but that was even worse. The Khalifa was killed, along with 1 million people in Baghdad. We lost Masjid Al-Aqsa for over 90 years. There was a cross on top of the Qubbatul Sakhra. So we mustn't lose hope. We have to do our part. That's very, very important. That's why Allah has kept this veil from us. I wouldn't want to be there. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but this is my understanding, that when he comes, because when he comes, Dajjal is going to come. And Dajjal is sharru ghaibin yuntadhar, one of the worst of the unseen realities that are being awaited. The fitna that's going to be there. I mean, just think of any temptations for you today, and how difficult it is for us to manage those temptations, deal with them. That time it's going to be much more complicated. So I don't want to be around. I'd rather die on Iman before that with security. We ask for husnul khatimah for us and for all of us. But these challenges are on. That's what gives you an understanding of the Mahdi radiallahu anhu. The final point I want to make is that, of course, there's a lot of people who've actually completely denied the Mahdi radiallahu anhu, that there's no such thing. But as I mentioned, there are numerous ulama who've written and compiled, there's no need to give you all of the names of the books, on all of the ahadith related to Mahdi radiallahu anhu. There's over 200 narrations, with at least a handful from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly, clearly. They may not be in Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, directly with his name, but there are in the other sunan. And there are definitely ahadith in Bukhari, in Muslim, which indicate towards him, and he can't indicate towards anybody else except him, because of the descriptions are so vivid. I remember once I went into a shop, I was just having a discussion, and a person said, there is no Mahdi. There are people out there who are denying, there's people out there who are denying the coming back of Isa alayhi salam. So Mahdi radiallahu anhu, can more easily be denied by people if that's the case. So Mahdi radiallahu anhu has been distorted, he's been co-opted, he's been basically then disowned and disregarded as well. Our belief is in him, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us iman and to grant us illumination and grant us a clear understanding of these things. I'm really glad, mashallah, that is this the first Khatm Naboot primarily in English?
Second.
It's the second one. That's very good, mashallah. That's very good, because until now a lot of people out there just felt it was an Urdu Pakistani issue or Indian issue. So now, inshallah, the mainstream will take this on, and they will become much more educated about this. So it'll become a bigger, inshallah, a much bigger movement, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.